July the 5th this year sees the fulfillment of centuries of social legislation when the new National Insurance Acts come into operation. For the first time, everyone, or almost everyone, in the United Kingdom can insure against want. There will be sickness and unemployment benefits, retirement pensions, maternity grants, death grants, widows' benefits, guardians' allowances, industrial injuries benefits. You'll pay 4 and 11 each week, and your employer another 4 and 2.
What? You mean I've got to pay all that every week?
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
That was Churchill speaking in 1940, years before he became better known for selling car insurance.
Oh, yes.
He was actually talking about the Battle of Britain, but the phrase could equally well be used by his modern equivalent.
Never, in the field of financial services, was so much owed by so many. That's it.
As things stand, Britain has the world's second largest external debt. That's money owed to creditors outside the country, everyone from the US Treasury to the bloke Gordon Brown met at the G7, who lent him €2 for a coffee. So we are, in real terms, the world's second poorest nation, although you never get Ethiopian rock stars asking us if we know it's Christmas. Not that they get very far.
Humbug.
Latest official statistics put Britain's national debt at over £640 billion. That's more than £640,000 million, equivalent to over £10,500 for every person in the country.
Well done, Britain. You're in debt. You've borrowed against an unsustainable housing boom, and now you're facing a global recession and rising inflation, with unemployment and cuts in public services. Still, keep your head above water a bit longer, and you can retire on that nice fat pension you've saved up. You did save up, didn't you?
I take pensions extremely seriously because as of May 2010, I will be facing compulsory retirement. Maybe sooner.
Well, I think it was David Willits, or it might have been me, come to think of it, who said, and I've got it on tape here somewhere. Here it is. David Willits, 5th of July 2004. The scale and implications of the pensions crisis is still not understood, but I believe it's up there with terrorism or global warming as a threat to much of what we value. Well, there you are. You see, I know he's a Tory and he's a bit of a geek, and I wouldn't share a bath with him if he paid me, but basically he's right.
Once upon a time, not so very long ago, pensions held a respectable place in Britain's financial life. People were encouraged to save, either through their company pensions or with a range of worthy institutions.
I remember how my father would sit me on his knee and make me recite the names of all the pension companies. Prudential, my favourite, Friends Provident, Equitable Life, Scottish Amicable, Scottish Mutual, Scottish Trust Me, I Know Your Dad, and so on. But, you know, looking back, when you think of the 60s, you think of 3 things. The Beatles, George Best, and people enrolling in defined benefit company pension schemes.
By 1967, over 12 million employees had company pensions, which guaranteed them as much as 2/3 of their final salary in retirement. Their future looked secure.
So, of course, it couldn't go on like that.
By the 1980s, while private schemes were amicable or equitable, company pensions became raidable, tradable, vulnerable, and no longer available. This is because as many of the great British companies with great British pension schemes, names like ICI, GEC, Toyota, no longer existed in their original form. In just 20 years from being a great success story, Britain's pensions had turned into a nightmare, with company pension schemes facing a deficit of around £518 billion. That's £518,000 million, almost the size of the national debt. Actually, we really need to do something about these figures. After a while, they just sound meaningless. So maybe we should use rhyming slang. You know, a million is a Prince William. A billion is a Gillian McKeith, kick in the teeth. And a trillion is a Ronaldo. No rhyme there. No reason either. Here to explain, let's meet him, let's greet him, let's get a knife and fork and eat him, our business editor, Robert Peston. Bob, how has this come about? Well, Hugh, it was perhaps inevitable that the accumulated savings of large numbers of people would attract the attentions of the profit-seeking, the rapacious, and the downright unscrupulous. But Robert Maxwell, who raided his company's pension fund to keep his business going, was merely the most high-profile, certainly the most wide-profile, of a number of businessmen and companies who exploited their workers' pensions on both sides of the Atlantic, or in his case, the middle of the Atlantic, where his complex financial affairs led to his final flotation in 1991. In the United States, it's a similar story, but without the happy ending. The US government's pension bailout scheme now covers 44 million citizens, and over the next 10 years, it'll need over $50 billion of state support. This summer, in an effort to plug that gap, it put the money into hedge funds.
Place your bets.
Faced with a series of compensation claims in the 1980s and 90s, British manufacturing company Turner & Newall and its US owners, Federal Mogul, decided not to contribute to the company's pension fund for the best part of 2 decades. This, and the stock market collapse of 2001, left the scheme with a black hole worth hundreds of millions of pounds. As the company filed for bankruptcy, Federal Mogul's top bondholder was about to pitch in £14 million a year to the fund for 3 years, when the UK's new pensions bill made it possible for Federal Mogul to offload the TNN pension scheme, with its £1.6 billion of liabilities, onto the British Pension Protection Fund, leaving us to provide for their retired workers. Federal Mogul later bought back the company's assets and returned to profitable trading, all of which proves that when the going gets tough, the tough get away with murder. Raiding Britain's pension funds didn't start with Robert Maxwell, and it certainly didn't end there. And it wasn't just individuals, but governments that were doing it. When Labour came to power in 1997, the Paymaster General was Geoffrey Robinson. Things really could only get better. Like his Labour colleagues, Helen Liddell and Alistair Campbell, Robinson was once an employee of Maxwell. Together with Treasury colleagues Gordon Brown and Ed Balls, Robinson abolished tax relief on the dividends received by company pension schemes, a sleight of hand which was designed to bring a large cash windfall to the Treasury. It caused one revenue official to gush, "This is something I wanted to do all my life! Brilliant, Chancellor! Brilliant, Paymaster!"
Now, you see, that's the sort of people we're dealing with. You know, some people grow up wanting to be astronauts, others want to drive supersonic trains. I wanted to join the Royal Ballet. But this guy wanted to abolish tax relief on company pension dividends. It was all he wanted to do, his lifetime's ambition. Well, whatever floats your boat.
The effect was to further weaken Britain's company pension funds and deal another grave blow to the golden goose. When campaigning MP Frank Field pointed this out to Tony Blair, Blair was taken aback, saying, "Golly, Gordon never explained it like that."
That's because you weren't listening, arse.
Well, you see, I can remember a time, not so very long ago, when company pensions were an admirable, socially responsible means of provision for the workers. Whereas now they're seen as a burdensome liability on the company's balance sheet. Oh, they want to get rid of them, dispose of them as easily as possible. Scandalous.
Eager to take on the burden, and more particularly the potential for making profit from the large accumulated savings, were a new breed of private equity companies with names like Lucida, named after a typeface, and Cerberus, named after the Hound from Hell. The business of pensions had moved from the world of industrial engineering to the world of financial engineering, where pension funds now trade in derivatives like inflation futures, essentially gambling for grannies.
And how?
It was a something for nothing, a win-win. It seemed to make sense at the time, as did a lot of things when shares and property were going up and everyone benefited.
So, in a sense, Britain partied like it was tax year 1999, 2000, without worrying too much about what happened after we left office. Unfortunately, when I left the Chancellor's office, I ended up in the next one along with Blame Me on the door.
Now, he wasn't the first Chancellor to see Britain's company pension funds as a lucrative cash cow. It was a tradition going back to Nigel Lawson. With his daughter's eye for books and cooking and a good recipe for profit, Lawson spotted that companies were building up surplus cash in their pension schemes. Surpluses which he could usefully take in tax. So in 1988, he made companies cut any surplus cash in their pension funds back to a safety cushion